Throughout 2025, there have been a number of notable launch-related stories. A couple of those, though, include the massive increase in launch cadence by SpaceX and the introduction by Blue Origin to orbital launches. Here at the third annual Space Power Conference hosted by the Space Force Association, we heard not only from leaders of both of those companies, but also leaders from Space Launch Delta 30 and 45 about the successes this year, as well as the challenges next year and beyond.
So we only hit 160 so far, so I don't want to count my chickens before they're totally hatched. But I think we'll get 167 this year, which is, once again, pretty amazing.
That comment from SpaceX's Vice President of Launch, Kiko Donchev, came less than 4 hours before SpaceX launched its 161st flight in 2025. Starlink 6-9 mission lifted off from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, less than 60 miles down the road from where Donchev gave his remarks. Colonel Jim Horn, commander of Space Launch Delta 30 and the Western Range, says the more than 60 launches from SpaceX in California was an explosive growth for them.
68 launches this year so far from Vandenberg. We expect to hit somewhere in the neighborhood of the mid-70s, 75 sounds like a good round number. 1,320% increase in the last 5 years. I think we will hit over 100 in the next couple of years, and we're posturing to support as many as 150 to 200 launches a year in the future. So just tremendous growth.
Colonel Brian Chapman says a similar boom in launches is underway at the Cape as well. Donchev says there are a few reasons for this.
The demand comes from the proliferation of large constellations in low Earth orbit. They're commercial from a communication perspective. Obviously, SpaceX has Starlink that's driven a large number of launches. But there's also a huge shift on the government side. When you look at the SDA missions, some of the other architecture that SpaceX is working on with large LEO constellations that can provide huge increases of capability and are definitely a shift from the traditional launch a bird, it's good for 15 years, right? Instead, we're building these huge constellations that have large number of satellites and you can replenish them quickly. So that's one. How do you serve that? You serve it through reusability. It's not just reusability of your orbital launch vehicle, it's your reusability of your launch pads, of your recovery systems, whatever it may be to enable that throughput.
Sitting beside Donchev was Tom Martin, Senior Director of National Security Programs at Blue Origin. With his company completing its first 2 New Glenn flights, Blue Origin is focusing on ramping up launch cadence, as evidenced by the recent hot fire of the Glenn Stage 2 that will fly on the 4th launch of this rocket.
I think on the space access side, we obviously have a desire for more launch in general, but we want to reduce cost. We want it to be more responsive, especially from a military perspective. We want it to be more resilient. On the logistics side, we really need to talk about what missions do we want to be doing in 5 to 10 years that potentially need to be supported by logistics and logistics-associated technologies. I think the good news is on the space access side, the technologies we could apply to responsiveness, resiliency, cost, they all go together. The more often we launch, the more we have to figure out how to be resilient to anything that could go wrong. And that's going to kind of drive us to, I think, that future where we are more responsive, we are more resilient, we can swap out payloads quickly because one provider didn't show up. I think that's just kind of going to happen. I do think there's some military-specific use cases of responsive launch that will be coming forward that I think will be interesting to see how we work those between commercial capabilities and what the government needs specifically.
Part of looking towards the future of launch also includes the rockets of the future. SpaceX recently gained permission from the Department of the Air Force to overhaul Space Launch Complex 37 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Donchev says as Starship on-ramps, the Cape needs to make the necessary investments to allow for a more airport-like flow.
Maybe one flies more than the other, but there's equal footing, and the ability for everyone to fly is always there. That's going to come down to 3 main elements. The first is obviously infrastructure. We like to call it throughput. And the reason we say throughput, it's not just roads, it's waterways. It's all of the functions to be able to move the hardware and the people that make it possible to have such a launch cadence. We need to invest in a lot of science on blast and acoustics. I mean, one of the biggest pieces of feedback we hear about our large vehicle, and especially coming to the Cape, is how loud is Starship going to be? How is it going to impact the rest of the operators? We believe we've done some pretty good science, and it's not going to be maybe as impactful as some of the media outlets report, but that science needs to continue. And then third, and really a very important part of this, is we need to invest in the tools to manage the airspace, right? And to manage the scheduling of how you do all these things. These have been traditionally very manual type operations. We need to become much more operated in the way we move our vehicles, the way we schedule our vehicles, and then the way we manage our airspace. I mean, we really have to rethink the airspace problem, because the traditional method is just not going to fly, and we're going to need to have much more concurrent operations with aircraft rather than having a static hazard area that gets shut down sort of traditionally. I just don't think it will work otherwise.
Space Force held a so-called Reverse Industry Day the week after the conference. That venue allowed launch providers, including Stoke Space, Relativity, and United Launch Alliance, to tell the government what they'd like to accomplish over the next decade and the infrastructure needs attached to that.
As we have more and more launch happening, do we need a booster transport lane at the Cape? So as boosters are recovered on barges and need to be transported back to the launch sites, it doesn't impede the flow of traffic of folks I have coming and going to work every day there. How do I get commodities, hundreds of trucks worth of commodities over to each of the launch sites for what the LSPs need to be able to launch tomorrow's capability and get that mass up on orbit? Or do we need a pipeline? What does that look like? That holistic look end-to-end is what we're discussing now for the launch cadence in 2036, where we anticipate over 300 launches in a calendar year happening off the Eastern Range alone, much less the increase we're going to see out of Vandenberg.
After the meeting, the Space Force said, quote, "Continued cooperation will be critical as the Eastern Range scales operations to support national security, civil, and commercial missions." Reporting for Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith.